Hello, and welcome to another podcast by me, Douglas Grummons. Thank you for joining me again. Today, we're going to go into a deeper discussion of the podcast 11, the one we just finished, going a little deeper into freedom and what freedom means to, or should mean to all of us, right? Before we get into freedom and talking about the beauties of freedom, I'd like to say one more time that I am still thinking about putting out the 1-800 number, a line, an open line, so that you can talk to me and share anything you want to share with me. We can talk about any subject you want to talk about. I want to say that an open line can give you a deeper understanding and a moment of communion with me, and hopefully answer your questions. But on top of answering your questions, it's time that you get to share with someone who is of immense light. But we can talk more about that later on. Let's get back into talking about freedom. I'm reading this book from Osho called Freedom, the Courage to Be Yourself. And I shared a little bit about it in podcast number 11. So I'm going to continue the reading because it's gone deeper. And he's starting to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche was a philosopher and he leaned on being pretty much a mystic. I've always been a little bit of offstandish about Nietzsche because he's the guy that came out and said that, God is dead, now we are free. I didn't understand what Nietzsche was saying back then, because maybe my conditionings and everything, prohibited me from understanding it deeper. But Nietzsche came out and said that there are basically three stages of human development. The first stage is he called the camel. The second stage he called the lion, and then the third stage he called the child. So let me share these few words of Osho's. Out of the book Freedom Again. Osho says on page 52, he says, Friedrich Nietzsche, he says that man's life can be divided into three successive metaphors of the spirit. The first he calls the camel, the second he calls the lion, and the third he calls the child. Very pregnant metaphors, the camel, the lion, and the child. Each human being has to draw upon and assimilate the cultural heritage of his society, his culture, his religion, his people. He has to assimilate. All the past makes available, he has to assimilate the past. This is what Nietzsche calls the camel stage. The camel has the power of storing up in his body enormous amounts of food and water for the arduous journey across the desert. And it is the same for the human individual. You have to pass across a desert. You have to assimilate the whole past. And remember, just memorizing is not going to help. Assimilation, and also remember, the person who memorizes the past memorizes only because he cannot assimilate. If you assimilate the past, you are free from the past. You can use it, but it cannot use you. You possess it, but it does not possess you. When you have assimilated food, you need not remember it. It does not exist separate from you. It has become your blood, your bone, your marrow. It has become you. The past has to be digested. Nothing is wrong with the past. It is your past. You need not begin from ABC. If each individual had to begin from ABC, there would not be much evolution. And that's why animals have not evolved. The dog is the same as it was millions of years ago. Only man is the evolving animal. So from where does this evolution come? It comes because man is free. Also, man is the only man who can assimilate the past. Once the past is assimilated, you are free from it. You can move in freedom and you can use your past. Otherwise, you will have to pass through so many experiences, your life will be wasted. You can stand on the shoulders of your fathers and forefathers and their forefathers, and man goes standing upon each man's shoulders, hence the height of man achieves. Dogs cannot achieve that. Wolves cannot achieve that. They depend on themselves. Their height is their height. In your height, Buddha is assimilated, Christ is assimilated, Patanjali is assimilated, Moses is assimilated, and Lao Tzu is assimilated. The greater the assimilation, the higher you stand. You can look back from the peak of a mountain. Your vision is great. Assimilate more. There is no need to be confined to your own people. Assimilate the whole past of all the peoples of the whole earth. Be a citizen of the planet Earth. There is no need to be confined by the Christian or the Hindu or the Mohammedan just assimilate all. The Quran is yours, the Bible is yours, so is the Talmud and the Vedas and the Tao Ching. All is yours. Assimilate all. And the more you assimilate, the higher will be the peak on which you can stand and look far away at distant lands, and distant views become yours. This Nietzsche calls the camel stage. But don't be stuck there. One has to move. The camel is the larvae. The camel is the hoarder. But if you are stuck at the stage and always remain a camel, then you will not know the beauties of the benedictions of life. Then you will never know God. You will remain stuck in the past. The camel can assimilate the past, but he cannot use it. In the course of his personal development, the time comes when the camel has to become the lion. The lion proceeds to tear apart the huge monster known as thou shalt not. The lion in man roars against all authority. The lion is a reaction, a rebellion against the camel. The individual now discovers his own inner light as the ultimate source of all authentic values. He becomes aware of his primary obligation to his own inner creativity, to his innermost hidden potential. A few remain stuck at the stage of the lion. They go on roaring and become exhausted in their roaring. It is good to become a lion, but one has to still take one more jump, and that jump is to become a child. Now, each of you has been given a child, each of you has been a child, but those who know, they say that the first childhood is false childhood. It is like teeth. They only look like teeth, but they are of no use. They have to fall out. Then the real teeth are born. The first childhood is a false childhood, and the second childhood is the real childhood. That second childhood is called the stage of the child or the stage of the sage. It means the same. Unless a man becomes utterly innocent, free from the past, so free that he is not even against the past. Remember it, the person who is still against the past is not really free. He still has some grudges and some complaints and some wounds. The camel still haunts him. The shadow of the camel still follows. The lion is there, but still afraid somehow of the camel, fearful that it may come back. When the fear of the camel is completely gone, the roaring of the lion stops, and then the song of the child is born. I would like you to go into these three stages very deeply and very penetratingly, because they are of immense value. The stage of the camel, the assimilation, is just like a child in the womb who goes through nothing but assimilate. He just eats. The mother gets bigger and bigger and is getting ready for the final plunge to move into the world. Right now, there is no other work for the child. For 9 months in the mother's womb, he eats and sleeps and eats. He goes on sleeping and eating, and these are the only two functions. Even after the child is born, for months he will be doing just that, eating and sleeping. Slowly, sleeping will become less and less, and eating will become less and less. And then he is ready. He is ready to become an individual. And the moment the child becomes ready to be an individual, disobedience enters in. The child starts saying no. Yes, saying by and by disappears. Obedience dies. Disobedience is born. And this is the state of the camel. It is the state of assimilation. The camel does not know how to say no. The camel is not acquainted with the no. He has not heard the word, and he has not tasted the joys of saying no. He only knows yes. His yes cannot be very deep, because without knowing no, your yes cannot be very deep. It has to remain superficial. The man who has not known no, how can he really know yes? His yes will be impotent. The camel's yes is impotent. The camel does not know that it is happening. He only goes on saying yes because that's the only word that he has been taught. Obedience, belief, these are characteristics of the stage called the camel. Adam was in the stage before he ate the fruit off the tree of knowledge, and each human being passes through this state. This is a state which the pre-mind and the pre-self, there is no mind yet. The mind is growing, but it is not a complete phenomenon. It is very vague, ambiguous, dark, and nebulous. The self is on the way, but it is still only on the way. There are no clear-cut definitions of it. The child does not know himself as separate yet. Adam, before he ate the fruit, was part of God. He was in the womb. He was obedient. He was a yea-sayer. But he was not independent. Independence enters only through the door of no, through the door of yes, only dependence. So in this stage of the camel, there is dependence, helplessness. The other is more important than your own being. God is more important. Father is more important. Mother is more important. Society is more important. The priest is more important. The politicians is more important. Except you, everybody is important. The other is important. You are still not there. It is a very unconscious state. The majority of the people are stuck there. They remain camels. Almost 99% of the people remain camels. And this is a very sad state of affairs. That 99% of human beings remain as larvae. That's why there is so much misery and no joy. And you can go on searching for joy, but you will not find it, because joy is not given there. Outside, unless you become a child, the third stage is attained. Unless you become a butterfly, you will not be able to know joy. And joy is not something given outside, it is a vision that grows inside of you. It is possible only in the third stage. The first stage is of misery, and the third stage is of bliss. And between the two is the state of the lion, which is sometimes miserable, and sometimes pleasant, sometimes painful, and sometimes pleasurable. At the stage of the camel, you are parrots. You are just memories, nothing else. Your whole life consists of beliefs, given to you by others. This is where you'll find the Christians and the Mohammedans and the Hindus and the Jains and the Buddhists. They go into churches and the temples and the mosque, and you will find great gatherings of camels. You will not find a single human being. They go on repeating parrot-like. And Osho continues on. He says, I have heard a story. The story is of a medieval knight who entered a course at the local dragon slaying school. Several other young knights who also attended this special class taught by Merlin the magician. Our anti-hero went to Merlin the first day and let him know that he would probably not do well in the course because he was a coward, and he was sure that he would be much too frightened and inept ever to be able to slay a dragon. And Merlin said he need not worry because there was a magic dragon slaying sword which he would give this cowardly young knight. And with such a sword in hand, there was no way that anyone could fail in slaying the dragon. The knight was delighted to have this official magic prop with which any knight, no matter how worthless, could kill a dragon. From the first field trip on, magic sword in hand, the cowardly knight drew dragon after dragon, freeing one maiden after another. One day, toward the end of the term, the Merlin sprung a pop quiz on the class which the young knight was attending. The students were to go out in the field and kill a dragon that very day. In the fury of excitement, as all the young knights rushed off to prove their mettle, our anti-hero grabbed the wrong sword from the rack, and soon he found himself at the mouth of the cave from which he was free a bound maiden. Her fire-breathing captor came rushing out, not knowing that he had picked the wrong weapon. The young knight drew back the sword in preparation for undoing the charging dragon. And as he was about to strike, he noticed that he had taken the wrong sword. No magic sword, this is just your ordinary, adequate for good knights only sword. It was late. It was too late to stop. He brought down the ordinary sword and with a trained sweep of his arm, and to his surprise and delight, off came the head of the still another dragon. Returning to the class, the dragon's head tied to his belt, sword in hand, the maiden in tow, he rushed to tell Merlin of his mistake, of his unexplainable recovery. And Merlin laughed when he heard that the young knight's story. His answer to the young knight was, I thought that you would have guessed by now. None of the swords are magic, and none of them ever have been. The only magic is in believing. Osho continues on. He says, the camel lives in the magic of believing. It works, and it can work miracles, but the camel remains a camel. The growth is missing. The people praying in the temples and the churches are under the influence of belief. They don't know what God is. They have never felt anything like that. They only believe. Their magic of belief goes on doing certain things to them. But that is all make-believe, a kind of dream world. They are not out of the unconscious, out of their sleep. And remember, I am not saying that this stage is not necessary. It is necessary, but once it is complete, one has to jump out of it. One is not here to remain a camel forever. And don't be angry at your parents or your teachers or your priest or your society, because they have to create the kind of obedience in you, because only through obedience will you be able to assimilate. The father has to teach, the mother has to teach, the child has to simply absorb. If doubt arises prematurely, assimilation will be stopped. Just think of a child in the mother's womb who becomes doubtful. He will die. He becomes doubtful of whether to partake of food from this woman or not, whether the food is really nourishing or not. Who knows, it may be poisonous. Whether to sleep for 24 hours a day or not, because this is too much. Sleeping continuously for 24 hours for 9 months. If the child becomes a little bit doubtful, in that very doubt the child will die. And still, a day comes when doubt has to be imbibed and learned. Each thing has its own season. Each father is faced with the problem, what to tell the son. Each mother confronts the problem, what to teach the daughter. Every teacher worries what should be imparted to the new generation. The past has many, many glories and many peaks of understanding, many conclusions which have to be imparted to the child. In the first stage, everybody has to be a camel, yea-saying, believing, whatsoever is given, assimilating, digesting, but this is only the beginning of the journey, it is not the end. The second stage is difficult. The first stage society gives you, and that's why there are millions of camels and very few lions. Society leaves you when you have become a perfect camel. Beyond that, society cannot do anything. It is there that the work of the society ends. The society of the school, the college, the university, it leaves you a perfect camel with a certificate. A lion you have to become on your own. Remember it. If you don't decide to become a lion, you will never become a lion. That risk has to be taken by the individual. That is a gamble. That is the very dangerous too, because by becoming a lion, you will annoy all the camels around you. And the camels are peace-loving animals. They are always ready to compromise. They don't want to be disturbed. They don't want anything new to happen in the world, because all new things disturb. They are against the revolutionaries and the rebellious, and are not about great things. Mind you, not about Socrates and Christ. They are bringing great revolutions. The camels are afraid of such small things that you'll be surprised. I'm going to skip over a few pages, but I wanted to try to fit as much in as I could in this one podcast. So over onto page 65, Freedom, the courage to be yourself. Osho says, the distance between the camel and the lion is big, but both exist on the same plane. The cocoon is static at one place. The caterpillar starts moving, but on the same earth. Each moment is born of the plane of the same, is the same. The first thing is given by the society. Your being a camel is a gift of the society. Your being a lion will be the gift that you give yourself. Unless you love yourself, you will not be able to do it. Unless you want to become an individual, unique in your own right, unless you take the risk of going against the current, you will not be able to become a lion. But if you understand the mechanism, in the very heart of the camel, the lion is created. Again and again, saying yes and denying the no. No goes on accumulating, and one day comes when one is so fed up with saying yes, just for the change one wants to say no. One is fed up with the positive. The taste of it becomes monotonous. Just for the change one wants to say no. And that's how the camel for the first time starts having dreams of the lion. And once you have tasted the no, the doubt, the disbelief, you can never be a camel again, because it brings such liberty and such freedom. Osho goes on to say the majority is stuck at the camel stage. The minority is stuck at the lion stage. The majority means the masses, and the minority means the intelligentsia, the artist, the poet, the painter, the musician, the thinker, the philosopher, the revolutionary. They are stuck at the second stage. They are far better than the camels, but the goal is not yet achieved. They have not yet come home. The third stage is the child. And let me break out of the text for just a second and share something else with you. In the book Wheels, I mentioned how the third eon of the ancient Egyptians was Horus, the god Horus that the ancient Egyptians were worshiping. And the eon of Horus was Horus was the child god to them. I found that very interesting, and it falls kind of in line with what Friedrich Nietzsche is saying, and what many of the sages have been saying, that the third stage is the stage of the child, the stage of returning to innocence. Anyway, back to what Osho was saying. Osho says, listen attentively. The first stage is given by the society. The second is given by the individual to himself. And the third is possible only if the caterpillar comes close by to a butterfly. Otherwise, it is not possible. How will the caterpillar ever think that he can fly on his own? That he can become a winged thing? It is not possible. It is impossible to think. It will be absurd and illogical. The caterpillar knows only how to move, but to fly is just absurd. And I have heard about butterflies teaching the caterpillars that they can fly, and they can object, and they say, no, it may not be possible. It may be possible for you, but it's not possible for us. You are a butterfly, and we are only caterpillars. We only know how to crawl, and one who knows only how to crawl, how can he imagine flying? That is a different dimension, an altogether different dimension, the vertical dimension. First, the camel to the lion is its evolution, and from the lion to the child is its revolution. A master is needed. At that stage, the society can make you a camel, but you yourself can make yourself a lion, but you will need a master, a Buddha, a Christ, a Rumi. You will need a butterfly who has wings. Only with a wing phenomenon will you be able to start dreaming about wings. How can you dream about something that you have not known at all? Do you think that a very primitive tribe living somewhere in the Himalayas can dream of a car? They have not seen one. They cannot dream about it. The dream is possible only when you have seen something, when you have seen a Christ, a Buddha, or a Bodhidharma, and you know that this happens, that these people look just like you, and still they are not like you. They have the same body, the same structure, the same, and yet something from the unknown has penetrated their beings. The beyond has come into them. The beyond is very, very tangible there. If you approach them with sympathy and love, you'll be able to have a few glimpses of their inner sky. And once you have seen the inner sky, you will start dreaming about it. A great longing will arise in you to become a winged phenomenon. And this is another reason why I want to start doing the 1-800 number. Like Osho says, I mean, it's part of your evolution to go from being a caterpillar, first being a larvae, and then becoming a caterpillar, and just assimilating, eating and sleeping, and then one day you see a butterfly, and you see how magnificent it is to be able to soar through the sky. And that, again, this is why I want to start this 1-800 number and reach out and talk to you if you'd like to talk to me. And again, one more time, I think we're going to call it 1-800 the Guru. I don't know if I could actually, live up to being called a guru, but it's more about just spending time with me and sharing a few laughs and a few stories, and enhancing your life so that you can go from evolution to revolution, and one day become like a butterfly and soar through the open sky. Anyway, thanks again for joining me. You guys take care of yourself. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Bye.